"You're not giving up, are you?" she asked without looking at him.
No,
He replied simply.
you haven't asked me to.
She swallowed hard. Silence stretched between them, thick as velvet. "I can't be what you want," she said finally.
You already are.
His voice was low, steady. And that was what made it dangerous. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't dramatic. It was truth. Quiet, unshakable truth. She closed her eyes, hating the way her body responded. How her skin prickled. How her pulse betrayed her. She didn't want to feel this. She didn't ask for any of it. But it was there. Alive. Burning. Tyler took a step closer, his hand brushing her hip, a touch so light it could have been imagined.
You want to forget,
He whispered.
but you can't.
Hearts Audio Library presents Taken Before the Ring, a novel by Honey Hearts. But before I start this story, kindly hit the subscribe button and also hit like if you like the story. Thank you. Part 1. Scarlett Turner lived a life shaped by old money, power, and legacy, wrapped in silk and diamond but suffocating to the soul. Her family's name carried weight in every corner of the business world, yet it came with a silent price. Obedience. The day her parents returned from New York City, carrying bright smiles and ominous news, was the day her future began to unravel. Her brother, Ethan Turner, was returning, engaged and bringing his fiancée to meet the family in their ancestral estate nestled in Charleston, South Carolina. The household buzzed with excitement. But amidst the chatter and celebration, a quiet bomb was dropped over lunch like a garnish on fine cuisine. Scarlett, the heiress of Turner Enterprises, was to be married. Not by choice. Not for love. For business. The man was a stranger. An heir to Foster Publishing, a powerful name, no doubt, but faceless and unknown to her. The merger of their companies required a union, one bound in blood and rings. She refused. Her father's voice rose. Her mother pleaded. Scarlett's protest turned from calm to desperate, but tradition and business sense drowned her cries. It was not about love, it was legacy, alliances, expansion. Everything but her. By nightfall, her fury had no outlet. Her car tore down the highways of Atlanta and spilled into downtown. She wandered through shops, stuffed herself with food she barely tasted, and ended in the one place she swore she would never seek comfort from, alcohol. The bar smelled of gin and perfume. Lights flickered lazily across leather seats and glass counters. She sat alone, ordering drink after drink, chasing forgetfulness in tiny burning gulps. By her fourth glass of martini, her limbs felt light and her lips buzzed. Her phone exploded with missed calls and messages, her cousins, her mother, even her brother. She ignored them all. When she finally answered, it was only to reassure her worried cousin, Samantha West, that she was fine, hidden, and not returning home, at least not tonight. And that's when he appeared. He sat beside her, uninvited yet uncannily familiar. Tall, with a scent that cut through the staleness of the bar, a masculine blend of cedar, spice, and something expensive. His voice was warm, a balm with an edge. "You look like the world's collapsing on your shoulders," he said, a faint smile tracing his lips. Scarlett scoffed. "What's it to you?" "Maybe nothing." "Maybe everything," he replied. He ordered a whiskey. Smooth, confident, unbothered. She rolled her eyes, yet she didn't move. She could have. Should have. But something about him, his stillness, his quiet intensity, kept her rooted. The conversation turned to fate. To unwanted obligations. To parents forcing their children into roles they weren't ready for. Their stories echoed. Two strangers in the dark, tied together by invisible chains. Scarlett laughed, slurred, sad, yet oddly free. "I'm doomed. I'm dying," she whispered with a tear-stained chuckle. His gaze softened. "You're drunk." "And hurting." "I want to disappear," she said. "Take me somewhere." "Anywhere." He hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he helped her stand, steadying her with arms that felt like safety. The world spun, and she let herself fall into the gravity of him. She didn't know where he took her, some apartment, maybe a condo. All she remembered was the faint scent of lavender soap, the cool touch of bedsheets, and his voice lulling her into sleep. But sleep never came. Heat bloomed between them like a long-held spark finally finding air. She touched him, pulled him, demanded kisses he resisted at first, but only barely. Her hands were bold, her mouth reckless. She called him Angel, and he laughed, low and amused. Clothes melted. Sense disappeared. She surrendered, completely, blissfully, to the stranger's lips, his hands, his body. He found her innocence with a gasp and a curse. "You're a virgin," he whispered in disbelief, slowing for the first time, handling her like she was made of glass. "I was," she corrected. "Now just don't stop." Pain ebbed into pleasure. Hesitation faded into hunger. The night unfolded like a fevered dream. Sheets tangled, breaths caught, her name lost between sighs and moans. He took her with reverence and fire, as if he knew this moment would echo beyond the night. And when she finally drifted off, nestled against his chest, she felt the strangest thing. Safe. Warm. Wanted. The next morning, reality returned with the cruel clarity of daylight. Scarlett woke alone in a bed, not hers, naked beneath unfamiliar sheets. Her head throbbed. Her thighs ached. Her heart fluttered. She sat up, gathering her clothes, moving with as much stealth as she could manage. Before leaving, she dared one last glance at the man who had undone her in ways no one ever had. He slept peacefully, lashes dark against his cheekbones, lips slightly parted. His body was a sculpture of control and temptation. She raised her phone and snapped a photo. "An angel sent to ruin me," she whispered, then slipped out the door. She didn't know his name. She didn't want to. It was one night. And it had to stay that way. Part 2. The long drive back to Atlanta was silent, save for the occasional hum of tires against pavement and the dull ache echoing in Scarlett Turner's body. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. No matter how many times she replayed it in her mind, she couldn't make sense of what had happened. One night. One stranger. One mistake. Or was it? By the time she pulled into the Turner estate, the sun was high and merciless, casting light on everything she wished to keep buried in the dark. Her heels clicked along the marble floor as she entered, head high, face blank. Ethan Turner was the first to greet her, smiling with that all-too-familiar concern behind his eyes. He introduced his fiancée, Lily Foster, a tall, elegant woman with a subtle intensity in her gaze. Scarlett offered a polite smile and a handshake. But something about the woman's face unsettled her. A familiarity she couldn't quite name tugged at her memory. Still hungover, still reeling, she forced herself to float through the day like a ghost. Numb yet painfully aware of the world she'd returned to. Over lunch, her father spoke again of the merger. Scarlett didn't argue this time. What was the point? All her protests, all her tears, useless against a decision already made in boardrooms and bloodlines. So she nodded. She agreed. Her mother smiled like victory. Her father, relieved, called it maturity. But it wasn't surrender. Not really. It was resignation. A choice made when all other choices had been taken. She told herself it didn't matter anymore. Not after what she had done. She wasn't the same woman who sat at that lunch table days ago, still holding on to fairy tale endings. That woman had been broken open in the arms of a stranger and rebuilt into something colder, sharper. But fate wasn't done playing with her yet. The next day, preparations were made for a family lunch. Lily's brother, the heir, the fiancé-to-be, the man, was flying in from San Francisco. Scarlett didn't care. Not until the car arrived. Not until he stepped out. And her world collapsed. Black shirt, black jeans, sunglasses. A slow, confident walk. She didn't need to see his eyes. She didn't need to hear his voice. She already knew. The man she had surrendered herself to in a drunken haze was Tyler Foster, the very man her parents wanted her to marry. Her breath hitched. Her stomach twisted. No, no, no. She turned her back, trying to hide, but the heat of his gaze crawled across her skin. She felt it even with her eyes closed. The connection wasn't imagined. It wasn't gone. It was burning. She finally faced him because she had to, because her father introduced her by name. Tyler froze. Recognition struck his face like thunder. So this was it. The one-night stand had a name now. Scarlett Turner. His future bride. The handshake that followed was electric. His fingers curled around hers like memory. His voice cool, unreadable as he said, "Nice to see you here. How have you been?" How dare he sound casual? How dare he smile as if their bodies hadn't been wrapped around each other hours before? She matched his act. Smiled. Pretended. "Hello," she said smoothly. "Pleasure to meet you." Their secret clung to the air like perfume. No one around them knew. No one suspected. But both of them did. And it was all too loud in the silence between them. Lunch passed in a blur of fake smiles and clinking silverware. Scarlett barely touched her food. Tyler watched her like a storm held in check. At one point, her brother joked that maybe she needed an angel to help her eat. Tyler smiled. Or maybe she needs a real angel. The implication made her stab her fork into her steak harder than necessary. He was playing with fire. So was she. That night, she stared at the ceiling in her bedroom, her phone gripped tightly in her hand. She opened the photo. His face, asleep, untouched by the world. Peaceful. Tempting. She should delete it. She didn't. The next few days blurred again. Family events, polite nods, idle conversation. And Tyler, always there. Always close. Always looking at her like he knew every inch of her skin. Which, of course, he did. But the real storm brewed in the kitchen. It was supposed to be a simple task. She offered to fetch the drinks. Alone. Safe. He followed. She didn't hear him at first, too focused on the tray she was arranging. But his scent, God, that same scent, hit her like a memory laced with heat. She stiffened. He leaned in. "I've missed you," he said quietly. She didn't respond. His arms wrapped around her from behind, slow and warm, pressing her back against his chest. The tray shook in her hands. "What do you want, Tyler?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Us? There is no us. You gave me something no man's ever had. And you gave me something I never asked for." He turned her in his arms, cupped her face with maddening gentleness. Stop pretending it meant nothing. She hated how steady he looked. How composed. Meanwhile, her heart was falling apart in her chest. "I don't care if it meant something to you," she said. "To me, it was one night. One mistake." He narrowed his eyes. "You're lying." She pushed him away, but he didn't fight back this time. Only watched her with that same quiet fire that made her knees weak. And then he left. No arguments. No pleas. Just that lingering look that promised nothing was truly over. Not between them. Not yet. Part 3. Scarlett Turner tried to forget. She tried to bury the night in her mind, to silence the memory of his mouth on her skin, his breath on her neck, the sweet destruction of her first time. But some truths were not meant to stay buried. They clawed their way out, especially when the man who unearthed them kept appearing in every hallway, every meal, every damn glance. She told herself she hated him, that he was arrogant, too composed, too unreadable. She told herself that what happened between them was a misstep, a drunken lapse, a chaotic moment sparked by alcohol and heartbreak. But the lies she fed herself didn't hold up when he stood near, when his presence alone ignited a heat that curled low in her stomach and refused to fade. She thought she could handle him. She was wrong. One afternoon, as sun poured lazily through the kitchen windows, she found herself baking pastries, a task she never enjoyed but pretended to, just to escape the crowded main hall. The scent of warm butter and sugar filled the room, a poor attempt to sweeten the bitterness in her thoughts. And then he entered. Tyler Foster. She sensed him before she saw him, his presence a gravity she couldn't ignore. She didn't turn. She couldn't. Her hands shook slightly as she continued kneading dough, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her falter. He watched her for a while. No words. Just silence heavy with unspoken things. Then the heat of him pressed against her back. His arms slid around her waist like they belonged there, like they remembered the curve of her body. She flinched, but he didn't move. "Let's talk about us," he whispered against her hair. There it was again. That word. Us. She wanted to scream, to push him away. But her body betrayed her. Her spine tingled. Her breath hitched. She tried to twist free. "There is no us, Tyler." But he didn't let go. Instead, he pressed his chest harder against her back, his lips grazing the shell of her ear in a ghost of a kiss. "You gave me something I'll never forget." She tensed. Her stomach knotted. That night, that damned beautiful, maddening night, she turned suddenly and shoved him hard, stepping back, needing space, needing air. "What happened between us," she snapped, "was a mistake." He said nothing. Just stared. Eyes unreadable. Lips pressed into a line. She hated that he didn't argue. She hated that he didn't beg. She hated how much she wanted him to. Because the truth was far more dangerous than either of them admitted. That night changed something. It cracked her open. It unsettled him. She left the kitchen before she could say more, before she could ask him to stay. Later that week, Caitlin West, her cousin and one of the few people she could still confide in, got married. A lavish ceremony filled with roses and pearls, laughter, and soft candlelight. Scarlett smiled through it, the perfect maid of honor, all poise and grace. But inside, she was fraying. During the reception, as the bouquet sailed through the air, fate played its next cruel trick. It landed in her hands. People cheered, laughed. Her cousin screamed in delight. But her fingers clutched the stems like a noose. Her chest burned. Her gaze swept the crowd instinctively, searching. And there he was. Tyler stood across the room, wine glass in hand, watching her. Not smiling, just watching. Like he always did. Like she was his and the world just hadn't caught up yet. Then the groom's lapel was tossed and landed in Paolo's hands. Laughter erupted again. Someone jokingly passed it to Tyler. That was when panic bloomed in her chest. No more games. She marched over, ripped the lapel from his hands, and shoved both the bouquet and lapel into her brother's arms. "You two are next anyway," she said with a forced smile. "Why not complete the prophecy?" She walked away before her voice cracked. She didn't need eyes on her. She didn't need Tyler's smirk. And she especially didn't need her cousins teasing her about the man whose body still haunted her dreams. But as she sat back down, she could feel it, his eyes on her again. Like they always were. Like he knew she could lie to everyone, but not to him. The engagement party came next. Lily Foster and Ethan Turner glowing on stage. Toasts. Laughter. A sea of well-dressed guests with champagne and expectations. Scarlett stood beside her parents, glass in hand, smile painted carefully on. She had almost convinced herself that she could make it through the night. That maybe Tyler would behave. She was wrong. Later that evening, she stepped onto the garden balcony to breathe, to escape. The stars shimmered above, indifferent and cruel. He followed, of course. "Why are you avoiding me?" he asked simply, leaning against the railing beside her. "I'm not." "You are?" Silence. "Do you regret it?" His voice was low. "Rough." "That night?" She swallowed. Her throat dry. Her heart a mess of thorns and longing. "Yes," she said. "I regret that I let it happen." Another silence. "Then, I don't." Her chest tightened. "I regret not remembering your name that night," he added, voice softer now. "But I don't regret you." She closed her eyes. Why did he always say things like that? Words that reached past her walls and scraped the edges of her truth. "We're supposed to get married," she finally said. Not because of love. Not because we want to. Because our families decided it's convenient. He looked at her then. Really looked. What if we decide differently? She turned to him, their faces inches apart, the night electric between them. Then we're both fools, she whispered. Maybe. His eyes dropped to her lips. But I'd rather be a fool with you than a puppet for them. For a moment, time stopped. The only sound was the wind stirring the trees, the only light the flicker of candles behind glass windows. And then, as if the stars themselves dared it, he leaned in. But this time, she didn't stop him. Part 4. The kiss didn't happen. Not quite. Their lips hovered, breaths mingled, time suspended, but Scarlett Turner turned away at the last second. A choice. A boundary. A desperate attempt at control in a world spinning off its axis. Tyler Foster said nothing. He simply watched her with those eyes, stormy, patient, unreadable. She left the balcony before she could change her mind. And he let her go, though the silence between them screamed louder than any plea. Inside, the music played on. Champagne glasses clinked. Families smiled. But she felt like she was walking through smoke, like every step took her farther from the version of herself she used to know. The version that believed in a life she could shape. That version was gone. Now she was the woman who gave away her virginity to a stranger, only to find out he was to be her future husband. A man whose touch still haunted her skin, whose voice still echoed when she closed her eyes. A man who saw past the layers she carefully wore and touched something she hadn't even known existed. And that terrified her more than anything. She started avoiding him again. Deliberately. Every time she heard his footsteps, she turned a corner. Every shared meal was spent talking to anyone but him. He played along, never confronting her publicly, never pushing her in front of their families. But she could feel his presence. The weight of his attention. Like heat that lingered even after the fire was gone. Still, she needed space. She needed to forget. She needed to not feel. So she distracted herself, shopping with her cousins, helping Lily Foster with wedding details, forcing laughter that felt like glass in her throat. But late at night, when the house was quiet, she'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how something so brief could live so loudly inside her. That one night hadn't just changed her body. It had altered something deeper. And she hated that it had come from someone like him. Someone who wasn't supposed to matter. Someone who did. Another party. Another obligation. Scarlett wore red again. She didn't know why. Perhaps she liked how it made her feel. Powerful, untouchable, dangerous. Or maybe it was a silent rebellion, a reminder that she wasn't the porcelain doll everyone expected her to be. She felt his gaze the moment she stepped out of the car. Tyler was by the bar, leaning against polished wood, fingers curled around a glass of bourbon. He looked devastating in black. Again. Always in black. Like sin dressed in silk. Like temptation personified. She ignored him. Smiled at strangers. Laughed when she had to. But when she stepped into the kitchen to find a bottle of water, he was already there, like a shadow that refused to leave. She froze. He didn't. This time, he didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He just stood there, watching her drink slowly, waiting. "You're not giving up, are you?" she asked without looking at him. "No," he replied simply. "You haven't asked me to." She swallowed hard. Silence stretched between them, thick as velvet. "I can't be what you want," she said finally. "You already are." His voice was low. Steady. And that was what made it dangerous. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't dramatic. It was truth. Quiet, unshakable truth. She closed her eyes, hating the way her body responded. How her skin prickled. How her pulse betrayed her. She didn't want to feel this. She didn't ask for any of it. But it was there. Alive. Burning. Tyler took a step closer, his hand brushing her hip. A touch so light it could have been imagined. "You want to forget," he whispered. "But you can't." She said nothing. His hand slid higher. She didn't move. "You want me to stop?" Still, she was silent. "Then say it." Her breath caught. He was too close. Too warm. Too real. "Say it, Scarlett," he murmured against her ear. and I swear I'll stop. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Because it would be a lie. And they both knew it. They didn't sleep together that night. But only because they both knew if it happened again, there'd be no walking away. 2 nights later, the storm broke. It wasn't planned. It never was. She had been reading in the upstairs lounge, pretending to care about a novel she couldn't finish, when Tyler walked in, sweat on his brow, clearly just back from a run. He was shirtless, towel around his neck, his chest glistening. She told herself to look away. She didn't. Their eyes met. And it was over. He walked straight to her, his expression unreadable, but his body taut with restraint. "You should stop looking at me like that," he said. "I'm not looking at you like anything," she lied. "Like you want me to ruin you again." A beat of silence. And then, "Maybe I do," she whispered. He didn't wait this time. He crossed the space between them, grabbed her face with both hands, and kissed her like he was claiming what was already his. There was nothing gentle about it. No hesitation. No innocence. Just fire. Just need. She gasped against his mouth, fingers digging into his arms. He tasted like heat, like memory, like the thing she swore she didn't want but couldn't stop needing. Clothes fell away, eager, impatient. Her back hit the couch, his weight pressing her down, fitting perfectly between her thighs. This time wasn't about proving anything. It was about surrender. Pure, desperate, aching surrender. His hands explored her like she was territory he knew but wanted to map again. His lips moved down her neck, over the swell of her breasts, across her stomach, devoted, worshipful, burning. When he entered her, slow and deep, she didn't cry. She moaned. Loud. Unapologetic. His name on her lips like a prayer and a curse. He moved inside her like he'd waited lifetimes. Like every moment they'd fought was foreplay for this raw, consuming, beautiful collision. They reached their peak together, tangled and gasping, her nails digging into his back, his mouth on her shoulder, whispering her name like a secret meant for no one else. And afterward, as their breathing slowed and the silence returned, he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close. Neither of them spoke, because nothing needed to be said. They both knew what it meant now. This wasn't a mistake. It never was. Part 5. Morning came too quickly. The sun seeped through the linen curtains, painting soft gold across the room. Scarlett Turner lay still, curled against Tyler Foster's chest, their legs tangled beneath the sheets. His hand rested on the small of her back, his breath steady, deep in sleep. She watched him. The man she had sworn to avoid, the stranger she had run to, the heir she was meant to marry. Fate, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. Her fingers traced slow, lazy patterns over his chest. The hardness of his body against her softness made her ache in ways that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with vulnerability. This wasn't just about lust anymore. Somewhere between resistance and surrender, something had changed. And that terrified her. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him. Her clothes were scattered across the floor, a trail of reckless decisions. She gathered them quietly, dressed quickly, and stood at the edge of the bed one last time. He looked peaceful. Bare. Real. She reached for her phone and snapped a photo, not out of mischief this time, but as a reminder. A proof that for once in her life, she chose something for herself. And then she left. Again. But this time, not to forget. She didn't avoid him after that. She couldn't. Not when every look, every breath, every brush of skin carried history. Unspoken but felt. Denied but alive. They didn't talk about what happened. Not immediately. Instead, they moved around each other like magnets caught in orbit, pulling closer with every shared glance, every almost touch, every restrained moment. Their families were none the wiser. They laughed, they planned the engagement, they posed for photos. But underneath the surface, something deeper pulsed. And it was only a matter of time before it broke free. 2 days before the formal announcement of their engagement, Scarlett sat alone on the balcony, watching the rain trace patterns across the stone tiles. Her mother had just shown her the custom wedding dress designs. Her father had spoken of the press release. Everything was being prepared. All that remained was her. And Tyler. She heard his footsteps before he appeared. "I thought you'd run again," he said quietly. She didn't turn. I thought about it. He stepped beside her, silent for a while. You don't have to marry me, he said at last. We can call it off. I'll take the blame. Say I couldn't go through with it. Save your name. She looked at him then. Really looked. This man, this stranger she gave herself to in the dark, was offering her an out. A clean escape. A life unburdened by duty, by scandal, by everything they had done. But all she saw in his eyes was sincerity. Not sacrifice. Love. The word hit her chest like thunder. I don't want out, she whispered. He blinked. I want in. With you. Not for the company. Not for the families. For me. His breath caught. Then he reached for her, held her like she was something fragile and fire at the same time. I thought I was ruining your life, he murmured into her hair. She smiled against his chest. Maybe you did. But you also made it mine again. They didn't need declarations. Or apologies. Or promises. They had already made all of those, with their bodies, their choices, their quiet defiance. Whatever came next, wedding, whispers, ciboire, it didn't matter. Because now they weren't just heirs. They were theirs. The engagement announcement was a blur of lights and music, of champagne and congratulations. Scarlett stood beside Tyler, fingers laced with his, her smile no longer forced. No longer painted. She was still the heiress. Still the daughter of a legacy. But for the first time, she wasn't the girl being told who to be. She was the woman who had chosen her story. And it began with a night of fire. With a kiss in the dark. With a stranger she would never let be a stranger again. Epilogue. A year later, the waves kissed the shore with a lazy rhythm, the sand warm beneath Scarlett Turner's bare feet. The private beach was empty, except for the two of them, just how she liked it. She sat beneath the white canopy Tyler Foster had set up, her hair dancing with the breeze, a faint smile curving her lips as she watched him approach. He was shirtless again, sun-kissed and grinning, holding 2 coconut drinks like some kind of island god. I still can't believe you married me, he said, handing her one. I still can't believe you were the stranger I gave my virginity to. He smirked. Still your angel? She sipped her drink. More like my devil in disguise. He dropped beside her, pulled her into his lap, and kissed her shoulder slowly, reverently. Well, Mrs. Foster. She leaned into him, tracing lazy circles on his chest with her fingertip. I like you. That was it. 3 words. No flowers. No speeches. Just truth. Tyler smiled against her skin, then tilted her chin to face him. Good. Because I'm not done ruining you yet. She laughed soft and free and kissed him slow, sweet with just a taste of heat. The waves went on whispering. And somewhere in that soft hum of sea and sun, Scarlett realized, the best stories are never planned. They just sometimes begin with fire. The end.
Lighten up, take me on your magic river. Tell me all your dreams align. Sign me up and tell me about the people that you know who are trying to feel alive. Share my pillow and rain, rain, go away.
Thanks for listening. And again, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit like if you like the story. See you in my next audio story. More power.
I wanna hear about everything you